My sister thinks she's the boss at every job and got fired again. Now she's blaming everyone else but herself and tearing our family apart while living with our aunt. My sister Rebecca, 28F, has been unemployed for the past 6 months, and before that, she lasted exactly 3 weeks at a retail job. This pattern has been going on for years now. She gets hired somewhere, things seem fine for a few days, then something happens and she either quits or gets fired. I'm her brother Jackson, 31M, and I've been hearing about these workplace disasters for the past 5 years. Rebecca lives with our parents because she can't afford her own place. Mom and Dad keep giving her money and making excuses for her. They say she's just unlucky or that employers these days don't appreciate good workers. But I've seen what really happens. Rebecca has this idea in her head that no matter what job she takes, she's automatically in charge of something. She doesn't understand the difference between being an employee and being a manager. Rebecca went to community college for 2 years and got an associate degree in business administration. She thinks this makes her qualified to run any business she walks into. The problem is she's never actually managed anyone or owned anything. She's worked as a cashier, a server, a stock clerk, and a receptionist. But in her mind, she's always been management material who just happened to be doing other tasks temporarily. Our parents don't see it because Rebecca tells them her version of what happens at work. In her stories, she's always the responsible one trying to help improve the business while lazy coworkers and unreasonable bosses hold her back. She makes it sound like every workplace is chaotic and unprofessional except for her. Mom and Dad believe her because they want to support their daughter. But I live in the same town as Rebecca, and I hear the real stories from people who work with her. 3 jobs ago, she worked at a coffee shop. The owner told me Rebecca spent her shifts rearranging the menu board and telling customers about better ways to make drinks instead of just taking orders. She argued with her supervisor about inventory procedures and insisted on reorganizing the storage room without permission. She lasted 2 weeks. Before that, she worked at a clothing store where she decided the mannequins were dressed wrong and changed all the displays during her lunch break. She also created her own filing system for customer returns because she thought the existing one was inefficient. The manager had to spend hours fixing everything Rebecca had reorganized. She got fired after 10 days. The worst part is Rebecca genuinely doesn't understand why these things keep happening to her. She comes home and complains about how other people don't appreciate her initiative and leadership skills. She talks about her coworkers like they're beneath her and her supervisors like they're incompetent. She never considers that maybe she's the problem. Last month, Rebecca got a job at a small accounting firm. It's owned by this guy named Kenneth, 45M, who has 2 other employees. Rebecca was hired as a filing clerk and data entry person. Basic stuff, organize documents, input numbers into spreadsheets, answer phones sometimes. The pay was decent for entry-level work, and Kenneth seemed like a reasonable boss. For the first week, everything went fine. Rebecca came home talking about how professional the office was and how much potential she saw for improving their systems. I should have known this was a warning sign, but I was just glad she was working again. The problem started in the 2nd week. Kenneth has a routine where he comes in early, works through the morning, then takes a break around 2 p.m. when things slow down. He usually sits in his office with the door open, drinks coffee, and returns phone calls or reads industry newsletters. The other 2 employees, Linda, 35F, and James, 29M, have been there for years and know this is just how Kenneth operates. He's the owner, so he sets his own schedule. Rebecca saw Kenneth taking these afternoon breaks and decided she should get the same privilege. But instead of asking about break policies or additional break time, she just started taking extended breaks whenever Kenneth did. She would leave her desk, go to the break room, and read magazines or scroll through her phone for 30 or 40 minutes at a time. Linda noticed this and mentioned it to Rebecca. She explained that everyone gets a 15-minute break in the morning and 30 minutes for lunch, plus they can take short bathroom breaks as needed. She told Rebecca that Kenneth's schedule was different because he owns the business. Rebecca listened to this explanation and then told Linda she appreciated the information but that she understood her role in the office. The next day, Rebecca took another long break during Kenneth's quiet time. James asked her if she was feeling okay because she'd been away from her desk for almost an hour. Rebecca told him she was fine and that she was just managing her time efficiently like Kenneth does. This went on for 3 more days. Rebecca would work normally in the morning, then basically disappear for long periods in the afternoon. Her filing was getting behind, and phone calls were going unanswered. Kenneth started noticing because clients were mentioning that no one answered when they called, and there were stacks of documents that should have been processed days earlier. Kenneth called Rebecca into his office and asked her about her work schedule. He wanted to know why her tasks weren't getting completed and why she was spending so much time away from her desk. Rebecca told him she was keeping the same schedule as everyone else in the office. Kenneth explained that her job responsibilities required her to be available during business hours and that her work was falling behind. Rebecca's response was that she was modeling her behavior after his leadership style. She said she noticed he took time for strategic thinking and planning during the day, and she was doing the same thing. She told Kenneth she was using her break time to consider ways to improve office efficiency and client communication. Kenneth stared at her for a few seconds, then explained that he takes breaks because he owns the company and works 12-hour days. He told Rebecca that her job was to complete specific tasks during specific hours, and that her breaks needed to follow the employee handbook policies that he'd given her on her first day. Rebecca nodded like she understood, but the next afternoon she took another extended break. This time she brought a notebook and sat in the break room writing down ideas for improving the office filing system. When Kenneth found her there, she showed him her notes and suggested they schedule a meeting to discuss her proposals for workplace improvements. Kenneth asked Rebecca to come back to his office. He sat her down and explained that she was hired to do filing and data entry, not to redesign business processes. He told her that her job performance was unacceptable and that she needed to focus on completing her assigned tasks. He said if she couldn't follow the break schedule and finish her work, he would have to find someone else. Rebecca came home that night and told our parents that Kenneth was threatened by her business education and leadership potential. She said he was trying to keep her down because he was afraid she might expose problems with how he runs his company. She complained that Kenneth was micromanaging her and not allowing her to contribute her skills and knowledge. Mom and Dad were sympathetic and told Rebecca to hang in there because good employees always face challenges from insecure bosses. They said Kenneth probably wasn't used to having someone with Rebecca's education and qualifications working for him. But I could see what was really happening. Rebecca was not doing the job she was hired to do. She was creating problems and then acting like she was the victim when her boss tried to correct her behavior. She was treating Kenneth like he was just another coworker instead of the person who signs her paychecks. The situation came to a head 2 days later. Kenneth was having a busy morning with client meetings and phone calls. Rebecca was supposed to be organizing quarterly tax documents that needed to be filed by the end of the week. Instead, she spent 2 hours reorganizing the supply closet because she thought the current system was inefficient. When Kenneth realized the tax documents weren't done, he found Rebecca labeling shelves in the supply closet. He asked her why she wasn't working on the priority project he'd assigned her. Rebecca explained that she'd noticed the supply organization was causing workflow problems, so she'd decided to fix it first before moving on to the filing project. Kenneth told Rebecca to stop working on the supply closet and get back to the tax documents immediately. Rebecca said she understood his concern but that she was almost finished with the closet project and it would only take another hour. She said once the supplies were properly organized, everyone would be more efficient. Kenneth raised his voice and told Rebecca that the tax documents had to be completed today and that she needed to stop reorganizing things and do her actual job. Rebecca responded that she was doing her job and that part of being a good employee means identifying and solving problems that affect the whole team. That's when Kenneth lost his patience. He told Rebecca that she was fired and needed to collect her things and leave immediately. Rebecca asked why she was being fired when she was trying to help improve the business. Kenneth said she was being fired because she wouldn't follow instructions and couldn't understand what her job responsibilities were. Rebecca packed up her desk and left. She came home that afternoon and told our parents that Kenneth had fired her for being too competent and making him look bad. She said he couldn't handle having an employee who understood business operations better than he did. Our parents were outraged and wanted to call Kenneth to complain about how he treated Rebecca. They talked about filing complaints with the labor department and leaving bad reviews for his business online. I tried to explain that maybe Rebecca had done something wrong, but they wouldn't listen to me. The thing that bothers me most is that Rebecca genuinely believes she was right and Kenneth was wrong. She thinks she lost her job because she was too good at it, not because she was terrible at it. She's already started applying for new jobs, and she's going to do the exact same thing again. I don't know how to help her because she won't admit there's a problem. She thinks every boss she's ever had was incompetent or threatened by her abilities. She can't see that the common factor in all these situations is her own behavior. Our parents enable this by taking her side every time and giving her money so she doesn't have to face real consequences. Rebecca has never had to worry about paying rent or buying groceries because Mom and Dad always bail her out. She can afford to quit jobs or get fired because she knows someone will take care of her. I'm watching my sister ruin her life, and I don't know what to do about it. Update 1. I thought I should update everyone on what's been happening with Rebecca since my last post. Things have gotten worse, and now it's affecting our whole family. After Rebecca got fired from the accounting firm, she spent about 2 weeks applying for jobs and complaining about how unfair her previous boss had been. She had 3 interviews during that time, and I was hoping maybe she'd learned something from what happened with Kenneth. The first interview was for a receptionist position at a dentist office. Rebecca came home saying the interview went great and that the office manager was impressed with her business background. She said they discussed her ideas for improving patient scheduling and office organization. I should have known this was a bad sign. Rebecca didn't get that job. When she called to ask why, they told her they were looking for someone who wanted to focus on reception duties rather than management consulting. Rebecca interpreted this as them being intimidated by her qualifications. The second interview was at a local insurance agency for a customer service role. Rebecca said this interview also went well and that she'd shared several suggestions for improving their client communication systems. She didn't get this job either. They told her they needed someone who was comfortable following established procedures rather than creating new ones. The third interview was at a small law firm for a paralegal assistant position. Rebecca was excited about this one because she thought working at a law firm would be more professional and that lawyers would appreciate her analytical skills. She came home talking about all the ways she could help them improve their case management and client relations. She didn't get this job either. The office manager called her personally to explain that they were looking for someone who could work independently on assigned tasks without trying to redesign their existing systems. At this point, Rebecca had been unemployed for almost a month. Our parents were getting worried about her job search, but they still believed the problem was with employers not recognizing her value. Mom started suggesting that Rebecca might need to look for management positions instead of entry-level jobs. This is where things got complicated. Rebecca took Mom's advice seriously and started applying for supervisor and coordinator positions. She updated her resume to emphasize her business degree and describe her previous jobs as leadership experience. She wrote cover letters explaining how she'd identified problems and implemented solutions at her previous workplaces. Rebecca got an interview for an assistant manager position at a retail chain store. The district manager interviewed her along with the store manager. Rebecca came home convinced she was going to get the job because the interview had lasted over an hour and they'd asked detailed questions about her management philosophy and leadership style. She actually got this job. The district manager called her 2 days later and offered her the assistant manager position. Rebecca was thrilled, and our parents threw a little celebration dinner. Everyone was relieved that Rebecca had finally found a workplace that appreciated her abilities. Rebecca's first day went well. The store manager, Kevin, 38M, showed her around and explained the basic responsibilities. She would be supervising 4 part-time employees, handling customer complaints, managing inventory orders, and covering for Kevin during his days off. The pay was significantly better than her previous jobs, and she would get benefits after 90 days. For the first week, Rebecca seemed genuinely happy with the job. She came home talking about her team members and the improvements she wanted to make to store operations. I was cautiously optimistic that maybe she'd finally found the right fit. The problem started in the second week. Rebecca decided that the store's employee schedule was inefficient and created a new rotation system without discussing it with Kevin first. She posted the new schedule and told her team members that the changes would improve coverage during busy hours. 2 of the employees couldn't work the shifts Rebecca had assigned them because of childcare commitments they'd discussed when they were hired. 1 employee was in college and had specifically been hired to work around her class schedule. Rebecca told them they needed to be more flexible if they wanted to succeed in retail. Kevin found out about the schedule changes when one of the employees called him at home to ask if she was going to be fired for not being able to work the hours Rebecca had assigned her. Kevin came in early the next day and had to redo the entire schedule to accommodate everyone's availability. Kevin pulled Rebecca aside and explained that employee scheduling had to be coordinated with him because he was responsible for labor costs and compliance with availability requirements. He told Rebecca that any major changes to store operations needed his approval first. Rebecca apologized and said she understood, but the next day she implemented a new customer service protocol without clearing it with Kevin. She created a checklist for handling returns and exchanges that was more complicated than the company's standard procedure. She trained her team members on the new system and told them it would reduce customer complaints. The new system actually slowed down transactions and confused customers who were familiar with the normal return process. Kevin started getting complaints from customers about long wait times and inconsistent policies. When he investigated, he discovered Rebecca had changed the procedures without authorization. Kevin had another conversation with Rebecca about following company policies and getting approval for changes. Rebecca explained that she was trying to improve customer satisfaction and that her business education had taught her to identify and solve operational problems. Kevin told Rebecca that her job was to implement existing company policies, not to create new ones. He said if she had suggestions for improvements, she should discuss them with him first so they could evaluate whether changes were appropriate and get proper approval from corporate headquarters. Rebecca agreed to follow Kevin's guidance, but she was frustrated because she felt like he wasn't letting her use her management skills effectively. She started complaining at home about how the company's corporate structure prevented local managers from making necessary improvements. The situation got worse when Rebecca decided to counsel one of her team members about work performance. The employee, Jessica, 19F, was a part-time college student who had been working at the store for 8 months with no previous problems. Jessica occasionally arrived a few minutes late for her shifts because of bus schedule issues, but she always stayed late to make up the time and Kevin had never considered it a problem. Rebecca called Jessica into the office and gave her a formal verbal warning about punctuality. She created a written document outlining expectations for arrival times and had Jessica sign it. Rebecca told Jessica that chronic lateness was unacceptable in a professional environment and that future violations would result in disciplinary action. Jessica was upset because she'd never been told her arrival time was a problem, and she'd always made sure to work her full scheduled hours. She asked Rebecca if Kevin had complained about her performance. Rebecca said that as assistant manager, she was responsible for maintaining team standards and didn't need Kevin's input for routine personnel matters. Jessica called Kevin that evening to ask if she was in trouble and whether she needed to find a different job. Kevin was confused because he'd never had any issues with Jessica's work performance. When Jessica explained about the formal warning and the documentation, Kevin realized Rebecca was conducting unauthorized disciplinary actions. Kevin came in the next morning and asked Rebecca about the situation with Jessica. Rebecca explained that she'd noticed performance issues and taken appropriate management action to address them. She showed Kevin the documentation she'd created and said she was trying to prevent small problems from becoming bigger ones. Kevin told Rebecca that disciplinary actions required his approval and that she couldn't implement formal warnings or create personnel documentation without authorization. He explained that Jessica was a reliable employee who had never caused any problems, and that her occasional late arrivals were within acceptable limits given her transportation situation. Rebecca argued that good management meant holding all employees to high standards and that making exceptions for some people would undermine team discipline. She said Kevin was being too lenient and that his approach would lead to bigger problems down the road. Kevin removed the disciplinary documentation from Jessica's file and told Rebecca that she was not authorized to conduct formal performance reviews or disciplinary actions. He said her job was to supervise daily operations, not to make personnel decisions. Rebecca was angry about this conversation and came home complaining that Kevin was undermining her authority and preventing her from doing her job effectively. She said the store had serious management problems and that Kevin wasn't providing proper leadership. Our parents listened to Rebecca's complaints and agreed that Kevin sounded like a poor manager who was threatened by Rebecca's competence. Dad suggested that Rebecca should document Kevin's interference with her management duties in case she needed to file a complaint with corporate. The final incident happened during Rebecca's third week on the job. The district manager, Patricia, 42F, was scheduled to visit the store for a routine inspection. Kevin told Rebecca that Patricia would be evaluating store operations and that everything needed to be perfect. Rebecca saw this as an opportunity to showcase her management abilities. She came in early and reorganized the stockroom according to her own system. She created new signage for different sections and rearranged products to improve efficiency. She also prepared a presentation for Patricia outlining several suggestions for improving store performance. When Patricia arrived, she noticed immediately that the stockroom layout was different from company standards. Kevin was confused because he hadn't authorized any changes. Patricia asked who had reorganized the stockroom, and Rebecca stepped forward to explain her improvements. Rebecca gave Patricia her presentation, highlighting the problems she'd identified with the current system and the solutions she'd implemented. She suggested that her organizational changes should be adopted company-wide because they would improve efficiency at all locations. Patricia listened politely, then asked Kevin to join her for a private conversation. They went into the office while Rebecca continued supervising the floor, confident that her presentation had impressed the district manager. After Patricia left, Kevin called Rebecca into the office. He told her that Patricia was concerned about unauthorized changes to store operations and that Rebecca's reorganization of the stockroom had violated several company policies about inventory management and safety procedures. Kevin explained that Rebecca was being terminated immediately. He said her position required following established procedures and working within the chain of command, and that she'd consistently failed to meet these basic requirements. Rebecca asked for specific examples of what she'd done wrong. Kevin listed the unauthorized schedule changes, the new customer service procedures, the disciplinary action against Jessica, and the stockroom reorganization. He said each of these incidents demonstrated that Rebecca couldn't follow instructions or work within the company's management structure. Rebecca argued that everything she'd done was intended to improve store operations and that she was being punished for showing initiative and leadership. Kevin said initiative was good, but that it had to be channeled through proper procedures and with appropriate authorization. Rebecca cleaned out her desk and left. She came home that afternoon and told our parents that she'd been fired by a weak manager who felt threatened by her business knowledge and management skills. She said Kevin had sabotaged her with the district manager because he was afraid she would expose his poor leadership. Our parents were furious and wanted to call the corporate office to complain about Kevin and Patricia. Mom said it was obvious that Rebecca was being discriminated against for being too qualified and that the company was probably violating employment laws. I tried to suggest that maybe Rebecca had made some mistakes, but Dad got angry and said I was taking sides against my own sister. He said successful people always face jealousy and resistance from mediocre coworkers, and that Rebecca just needed to find an employer who would appreciate her talents. But I can see what's really happening. Rebecca is doing the same thing at every job. She's acting like she's the owner instead of an employee. She doesn't understand that being hired as a manager doesn't mean she can ignore company policies or make decisions without authorization. She thinks having a title means she can run things however she wants. The worst part is that Rebecca is getting worse instead of better. She's more convinced than ever that her problems are caused by other people's incompetence and insecurity. She's not learning anything from these experiences because she refuses to consider that she might be wrong. Now she's been unemployed for another week, and she's already talking about applying for district manager and regional supervisor positions. She thinks the solution is to find a job with more authority so people can't hold her back anymore. I don't know how to get through to her, and our parents are making it worse by supporting her version of events. Rebecca is heading for bigger disasters, and nobody seems willing to stop her. Update 2: I need to update everyone because the situation with Rebecca has gotten much worse, and now it's tearing our family apart. After Rebecca got fired from the retail manager job, she spent about 3 weeks applying for higher-level positions like she'd planned. She was targeting district manager, regional coordinator, and operations supervisor roles at various companies. Most of these jobs required several years of management experience, but Rebecca was convinced her business degree and natural leadership abilities made her qualified. She didn't get any interviews for these positions. The few companies that responded told her she needed more experience before they could consider her for management roles. Rebecca interpreted this as age discrimination and said companies were illegally excluding qualified candidates based on assumptions about young people. After a month of rejections, Rebecca finally started applying for regular jobs again. She got an interview at a local credit union for a member services representative position. This was basically a bank teller job, helping customers with deposits, withdrawals, account questions, and basic transactions. Rebecca was excited about this opportunity because she said financial services was a more professional industry where her business background would be valued. She spent 2 days preparing for the interview and researching the credit union services so she could suggest improvements during the interview process. She got the job. The branch manager, Sandra, 45F, called Rebecca the same day and offered her the position. Rebecca would start the following Monday with 2 weeks of training, then begin regular duties helping members at the counter and over the phone. Our parents were relieved that Rebecca was working again. Mom and Dad had been giving her spending money for 2 months, and Dad had made several comments about Rebecca needing to contribute to household expenses if she was going to keep living at home. Rebecca's first week of training went smoothly. She learned the computer systems, memorized product information, and practiced handling different types of transactions. Sandra said Rebecca was picking up the procedures quickly and seemed comfortable interacting with members. The problem started during Rebecca's second week of training. She was shadowing different employees to see how they handled various situations. Rebecca noticed that different tellers had slightly different approaches to customer service, and she started suggesting ways to standardize procedures to improve efficiency. One teller, Maria, 52F, had been working at the credit union for 15 years. She had her own way of organizing her workspace and explaining products to members. Rebecca suggested that Maria should adopt the filing system that another teller used because it looked more organized and professional. Maria thanked Rebecca for her input but said she was comfortable with her current system. Rebecca persisted and explained how Maria's approach could confuse members who were used to different explanations from other tellers. She said consistency was important for customer satisfaction and business growth. Maria mentioned this conversation to Sandra, who told Rebecca that experienced employees had developed their own effective methods and that she should focus on learning rather than critiquing. Sandra said Rebecca would have plenty of opportunities to develop her own style once she completed training. Rebecca agreed to focus on learning, but she continued making observations about ways the branch could improve its operations. She suggested changes to the lobby layout, modifications to the phone greeting script, and adjustments to the appointment scheduling system. Sandra had another conversation with Rebecca about the difference between learning and consulting. She explained that Rebecca's job was to provide member services, not to redesign branch operations. She said Rebecca should concentrate on mastering her basic duties before worrying about broader business improvements. Rebecca finished her training and started working independently. For the first few days, she handled transactions normally and didn't cause any problems. Sandra thought the previous conversations had resolved the issue. But Rebecca was just getting comfortable with the environment. Once she felt confident with the basic procedures, she started implementing her ideas for improvements. She began greeting members with a more elaborate welcome speech that included information about services they might not know about. She thought this would increase product sales and demonstrate superior customer service. The longer greeting slowed down transaction times and created longer lines. Some members seemed annoyed by the extra information when they just wanted to make quick deposits or withdrawals. Sandra noticed the delays and asked Rebecca to use the standard greeting to keep lines moving efficiently. Rebecca argued that her approach was more professional and that members appreciated learning about available services. She said Sandra was prioritizing speed over quality, which would hurt the credit union's reputation in the long run. Sandra explained that member satisfaction surveys consistently showed that people valued quick, efficient service over lengthy product presentations. She told Rebecca to use the standard greeting and focus on completing transactions accurately and promptly. Rebecca complied for a few days, then started a new initiative. She began following up with members after their transactions to ask about their satisfaction with the service they'd received. She created informal surveys asking about wait times, employee helpfulness, and suggestions for improvements. Members were confused by this because the credit union already had formal feedback systems in place. Some people felt pressured to provide compliments or criticism when they just wanted to complete their banking and leave. Several members asked Sandra why they were being surveyed after routine transactions. Sandra told Rebecca to stop conducting member surveys immediately. She explained that customer feedback was collected through official channels and that informal questioning could make members uncomfortable or create liability issues for the credit union. Rebecca was frustrated because she felt like Sandra was preventing her from using her business training to benefit the organization. She said Sandra's resistance to improvement initiatives showed poor leadership and a lack of vision for growing the business. This attitude started affecting Rebecca's interactions with coworkers. She began offering unsolicited advice to other tellers about their customer service techniques and workspace organization. She suggested that Maria should smile more during transactions and that another teller, James, 28M, should explain procedures more thoroughly to elderly members. The other employees were annoyed by Rebecca's constant suggestions and corrections. Maria complained to Sandra that Rebecca was acting like a supervisor instead of a new employee. James said Rebecca made him uncomfortable by critiquing his interactions with members. Sandra called Rebecca into her office for a performance review. She explained that Rebecca's job duties did not include training or supervising other employees. She said Rebecca needed to focus on her own responsibilities and stop offering advice to coworkers unless they specifically asked for help. Rebecca said she was trying to help the team improve and that good employees should always look for ways to contribute beyond their basic job requirements. She argued that Sandra should encourage initiative and teamwork rather than discouraging employee collaboration. Sandra told Rebecca that collaboration meant working together on assigned projects, not critiquing coworkers' performance or redesigning established procedures. She said Rebecca's behavior was creating tension in the workplace and interfering with normal operations. Rebecca apologized and promised to be more mindful of boundaries, but she didn't really understand what she was doing wrong. She came home complaining that Sandra was a micromanager who felt threatened by employees with business education and fresh perspectives. The situation came to a head during Rebecca's 6th week on the job. The credit union was preparing for a regulatory audit, and Sandra needed everyone to follow procedures exactly as written in the policy manual. She held a staff meeting explaining that any deviations from standard procedures could result in compliance violations and regulatory penalties. Rebecca saw the audit as an opportunity to showcase the improvements she'd been suggesting. She prepared a detailed report outlining inefficiencies she'd observed and recommendations for updating policies to improve member satisfaction and operational effectiveness. During her lunch break, Rebecca typed up her report and left it on Sandra's desk. The report was 3 pages long and covered everything from lobby design to staff training protocols. Rebecca included specific suggestions for policy changes that she believed would impress the auditors and demonstrate the branch's commitment to excellence. When Sandra found the report, she was furious. The audit was focused on compliance with existing regulations, not on implementing new procedures. Rebecca's suggestions would require corporate approval, regulatory review, and extensive staff retraining. Implementing any of these changes during an audit period would create massive compliance problems. Sandra called Rebecca into her office immediately. She asked Rebecca why she'd prepared a policy change proposal when the entire staff had been told to follow existing procedures exactly. She explained that Rebecca's report could jeopardize the audit if regulators thought the branch was considering unauthorized modifications to approved policies. Rebecca said she was trying to help the credit union present its best face to auditors by demonstrating innovation and continuous improvement. She argued that her suggestions showed management's commitment to excellence and member service. Sandra explained that regulatory audits were about demonstrating compliance with existing rules, not about showcasing new ideas. She said Rebecca's report showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the audit process and could have created serious problems if she'd shared it with the auditors. Rebecca insisted that her business education had taught her that successful organizations always look for ways to improve and that standing still meant falling behind the competition. She said Sandra's conservative approach would limit the credit union's growth potential. Sandra told Rebecca that she was being terminated effective immediately. She said Rebecca had consistently failed to understand her role and had repeatedly created problems by trying to redesign systems and procedures that were working effectively. Rebecca asked for specific examples of poor performance. Sandra listed the extended greeting script, the unauthorized member surveys, the constant advice to coworkers, and the policy change report. She said Rebecca had been told multiple times to focus on her basic job duties but had continued trying to act like a consultant or manager. Rebecca argued that everything she'd done was intended to help the credit union succeed and that she was being punished for showing initiative and caring about the organization's future. Sandra said initiative was valuable when it was channeled appropriately, but that Rebecca had consistently ignored boundaries and authority structures. Rebecca packed her personal items and left the building. She came home that afternoon and told our parents that Sandra had fired her for being too educated and threatening the status quo. She said Sandra was incompetent and afraid that Rebecca would expose problems with the branch's operations. This is where things got really bad in our family. Dad had been getting frustrated with Rebecca's unemployment situation, and he lost his temper when she came home fired from another job. He started yelling at Rebecca about her attitude and her constant excuses for getting fired. Dad said Rebecca needed to accept that she wasn't management material and that she should focus on keeping a regular job instead of trying to redesign every workplace she entered. He said Rebecca was acting entitled and that her behavior was embarrassing the whole family. Rebecca yelled back that Dad didn't understand modern business practices and that his generation was too rigid to appreciate innovative thinking. She said Dad was taking sides with incompetent managers instead of supporting his own daughter. Mom tried to mediate, but both Dad and Rebecca were too angry to listen. Dad said he was tired of supporting Rebecca financially while she sabotaged every opportunity she got. Rebecca said Dad was being cruel and unsupportive when she needed her family's help. The argument ended with Rebecca storming out of the house. She went to stay with our cousin Lisa, 26F, for a few days while things cooled down at home. But when Rebecca came back, the tension was still there. Dad had spent those few days thinking about the situation, and he decided that Rebecca needed to face real consequences for her behavior. He told Rebecca she had 30 days to find a job and start contributing to household expenses, or she would need to find somewhere else to live. Rebecca was shocked because our parents had never given her ultimatums before. She said Dad was being unfair and that she couldn't control how employers treated her. She argued that she needed family support during difficult times, not additional pressure and threats. Mom was caught in the middle and didn't want to choose sides between her husband and daughter. She suggested that maybe Rebecca could try applying for different types of jobs or consider taking a skills assessment to identify better career matches. Rebecca said the problem wasn't with her skills or career choices but with employers who didn't appreciate qualified employees. She insisted that she just needed to find the right company that would value her education and abilities. Dad said Rebecca had been looking for the right company for 5 years and had been fired from every job she'd gotten. He said the common factor in all these situations was Rebecca's attitude, and that she needed to change her behavior instead of blaming everyone else. Rebecca accused Dad of betraying her and said she couldn't believe her own father was attacking her when she was already struggling with employment discrimination and workplace harassment. She said Dad's ultimatum proved that he didn't love her or want her to succeed. The fight escalated until Rebecca packed a bag and left again. This time she went to stay with our Aunt Carol, 48F, Mom's sister. Carol lives about an hour away and doesn't know much about Rebecca's job situation. That was 2 weeks ago. Rebecca is still staying with Carol, and she's been telling Carol her version of recent events. Carol called Mom to say she was worried about how Dad was treating Rebecca and that maybe Rebecca should stay with her until she gets back on her feet. Mom is stressed about the family conflict and feels guilty about Dad's ultimatum. Dad is frustrated that Carol is enabling Rebecca's behavior and that no one in the family seems willing to hold Rebecca accountable for her actions. I'm caught in the middle of all this drama. Rebecca has been texting me asking for support and saying she can't believe our family is abandoning her. Dad has been asking me to talk to Rebecca about her attitude and help her understand why she keeps getting fired. But I don't think Rebecca will listen to me any more than she's listened to anyone else. She's convinced that she's the victim in all these situations, and she has family members who are willing to support her version of events. The worst part is that Rebecca is now applying for jobs while staying with Carol, and she's going to do the exact same thing at the next workplace. She hasn't learned anything from her recent experiences, and she's more convinced than ever that her problems are caused by other people's incompetence and jealousy. I'm watching my sister destroy her career and tear our family apart, and I don't know how to stop it. Update 3. This is probably going to be my last update about Rebecca because I've reached the point where I can't help her anymore and I need to protect my own peace of mind. Rebecca has been staying with our Aunt Carol for about 6 weeks now. During that time, she's had 2 more job interviews and 1 short-term employment disaster that was somehow worse than all her previous experiences. The first interview was for an administrative assistant position at a small marketing company. Rebecca came back to town for the interview and stayed overnight at our house. She was excited because she said marketing was a creative industry that would appreciate innovative thinking and fresh perspectives. During dinner, Rebecca explained her strategy for the interview. She had prepared a presentation about social media trends and digital marketing opportunities that she planned to share with the hiring manager. She said most administrative assistants probably wouldn't think to offer strategic insights, so this would set her apart from other candidates. I tried to suggest that maybe she should focus on demonstrating her administrative skills rather than giving marketing advice, but Rebecca said I didn't understand how competitive the job market was. She said employers wanted to see initiative and business knowledge, not just basic clerical abilities. The interview didn't go well. Rebecca came home saying the hiring manager seemed confused by her presentation and asked mostly basic questions about scheduling, filing, and phone systems. She said the company was probably too small scale to appreciate sophisticated marketing strategies. She didn't get the job. When she called to ask for feedback, they told her they were looking for someone who wanted to focus on administrative support rather than business development. Rebecca told our parents this proved the company wasn't growth-oriented and probably wouldn't succeed in today's competitive market. The second interview was for a customer service representative position at a local utility company. This was a phone-based job handling billing questions and service requests from customers. Rebecca thought this would be perfect because she said utilities were stable businesses that needed customer service improvements. Rebecca prepared for this interview by researching customer service best practices and developing ideas for improving call center efficiency. She created a list of suggestions for reducing wait times, improving first call resolution rates, and increasing customer satisfaction scores. The interview lasted about 30 minutes, and Rebecca thought it went very well. She said the supervisor seemed interested in her ideas for customer service improvements and asked several questions about her approach to handling difficult customers. Rebecca got this job and was scheduled to start the following Monday. She would go through 1 week of training on company systems and procedures, then begin taking customer calls with supervision and support. Our parents were relieved that Rebecca was working again. Dad had softened his position somewhat after Carol called him to express concerns about his ultimatum. He agreed to let Rebecca move back home once she started the new job, as long as she contributed to household expenses and followed house rules. Rebecca's training week went normally. She learned the computer systems, memorized billing procedures, and practiced handling different types of customer inquiries. The training supervisor said Rebecca was grasping the technical aspects quickly and seemed comfortable with phone communication. The problem started during Rebecca's second week when she began taking live customer calls with minimal supervision. Rebecca decided that the standard call scripts were too impersonal and started modifying them to provide more comprehensive service. Instead of following the procedure for billing inquiries, Rebecca would research customers' entire account histories and offer suggestions for reducing their utility costs. She thought this demonstrated superior customer service and would improve the company's reputation. These extended calls created longer wait times for other customers and exceeded the target call duration metrics that the department used for performance evaluation. Rebecca's supervisor, Tom, 41M, noticed that Rebecca's average call time was nearly double the department standard. Tom discussed call efficiency with Rebecca and explained that while thorough service was important, she needed to balance completeness with productivity. He said customers appreciated quick resolution of their specific questions rather than comprehensive account reviews they hadn't requested. Rebecca argued that her approach provided better value to customers and that the company should prioritize service quality over call volume. She said Tom's focus on speed over thoroughness would hurt customer satisfaction in the long run. Tom explained that the department had researched optimal call handling procedures and that the current scripts and time targets were based on customer feedback and industry best practices. He told Rebecca to follow the established procedures while she learned the job. Rebecca agreed to follow the guidelines, but she continued providing extensive service that exceeded what customers had requested. She would research billing histories, explain rate structures, and offer energy conservation advice even when customers called with simple questions about payment due dates. Customer feedback was mixed. Some people appreciated the additional information, but others were frustrated by long call times when they needed quick answers. Several customers complained that representatives were providing too much information and making simple transactions unnecessarily complicated. Tom had another conversation with Rebecca about call handling procedures. He explained that customer service meant giving people what they needed efficiently, not overwhelming them with unrequested information. He said Rebecca needed to listen to what customers were asking for and provide focused responses. Rebecca said she was trying to educate customers about services and opportunities they might not know about. She argued that proactive customer service was superior to reactive problem solving and that the company should encourage representatives to go above and beyond basic requirements. Tom told Rebecca that going above and beyond meant providing excellent service within established parameters, not ignoring procedures to implement personal customer service philosophies. He said Rebecca needed to follow the call scripts and time guidelines or she would need additional training and supervision. The situation escalated during Rebecca's third week when she started offering billing advice that contradicted company policies. A customer called to ask about setting up automatic payments, and Rebecca spent 20 minutes explaining why automatic payments were disadvantageous and suggesting alternative payment methods. The customer was confused because she had specifically wanted to enroll in automatic payments to simplify her monthly routine. Rebecca insisted that automatic payments reduced customer awareness of usage patterns and that manual payment methods provided better financial control. The customer asked to speak with a supervisor because she felt like Rebecca was arguing with her instead of helping her enroll in the service she had requested. Tom took the call and quickly set up the automatic payment system the customer wanted. Tom called Rebecca into his office and asked why she had discouraged a customer from using a company service. Rebecca explained that she was providing honest financial advice and helping the customer make informed decisions rather than just processing requests blindly. Tom said Rebecca's job was to help customers access the services they requested, not to counsel them about financial management or question their choices. He explained that refusing to process legitimate service requests could create customer complaints and regulatory problems for the company. Rebecca argued that good customer service meant looking out for customers' best interests even when they didn't understand the implications of their decisions. She said Tom was prioritizing company profits over customer welfare. Tom explained that customers had the right to make their own financial decisions and that utility representatives were not qualified or authorized to provide personal financial advice. He said Rebecca needed to process customer requests according to company procedures and stop offering unsolicited counsel. Rebecca was frustrated and came home complaining that Tom was forcing her to provide inferior customer service and that the company cared more about processing transactions than helping customers. She said Tom's approach was unethical and that she was being pressured to compromise her professional standards. Our parents listened to Rebecca's complaints and were sympathetic about her workplace difficulties. Mom said it sounded like another situation where Rebecca's education and professional standards were causing conflicts with less qualified supervisors. But I was starting to see the pattern more clearly. Rebecca wasn't providing better customer service, she was imposing her personal opinions on people who had called for specific help. She was acting like a financial advisor instead of a customer service representative. The final incident happened during Rebecca's fourth week. A customer called to report a billing error and ask for an account credit. Rebecca researched the account and determined that the billing was actually correct according to the customer's usage patterns and rate structure. Instead of explaining the billing calculation and resolving the customer's confusion, Rebecca spent 30 minutes lecturing the customer about energy conservation and suggesting ways to reduce future bills. She implied that the customer's usage was wasteful and that the high bill was a natural consequence of poor energy management. The customer became angry and demanded to speak with a supervisor. She said Rebecca had been condescending and unhelpful, and that she felt attacked for asking a simple billing question. She threatened to file a complaint with the State Public Utilities Commission. Tom took the call and had to spend another 20 minutes apologizing to the customer and explaining the billing calculation in a respectful manner. The customer was satisfied with Tom's explanation but remained upset about her interaction with Rebecca. Tom called Rebecca into his office immediately. He said her interaction with the customer had been completely inappropriate and could have resulted in a regulatory complaint that would require investigation and documentation. Rebecca said she had provided accurate information about energy usage and billing calculations. She argued that customers needed to understand their consumption patterns and that educating them about conservation was part of providing good service. Tom explained that Rebecca had been condescending and judgmental toward a customer who had asked a legitimate question. He said customer service representatives needed to be helpful and respectful regardless of their personal opinions about customers' energy usage or spending habits. Rebecca insisted that she had been helpful by providing information the customer needed to manage her energy costs more effectively. She said Tom was criticizing her for being thorough and educational rather than just transactional. Tom told Rebecca that she was being terminated immediately. He said her approach to customer service was creating complaints and potential regulatory problems, and that she had consistently refused to follow procedures and accept guidance. Rebecca asked for specific examples of poor performance. Tom listed the extended call times, the refusal to process automatic payment enrollment, and the condescending interaction with the billing inquiry customer. He said Rebecca had been counseled multiple times about these issues but had continued the same behavior. Rebecca argued that she was being fired for providing superior customer service and that Tom was threatened by her business education and professional standards. She said the company was prioritizing quantity over quality and that her termination proved they didn't value customer satisfaction. Rebecca cleared out her desk and left the building. She drove straight to Carol's house without coming home first. She called our parents that evening and told them she had been fired by another incompetent supervisor who felt threatened by her customer service expertise. This time, Dad's reaction was different. Instead of getting angry, he just sounded tired and disappointed. He asked Rebecca how many jobs she thought she could lose before she considered that maybe she was doing something wrong. Rebecca said Dad was being unsupportive and that she needed encouragement, not criticism. She said successful people always face resistance from mediocre managers and that persistence was the key to finding the right opportunity. Dad said he loved Rebecca but that he couldn't keep watching her destroy every opportunity she got. He told her she was welcome to come home for family visits, but that she couldn't live in our house unless she was willing to acknowledge her problems and work on changing her behavior. Rebecca hung up on Dad and hasn't spoken to our parents since then. That was 3 weeks ago. Carol has been calling Mom to update her on Rebecca's situation and to express concern about our family's lack of support. According to Carol, Rebecca has been applying for jobs and interviewing regularly. She's targeting customer service manager and training coordinator positions because she says her recent experience has given her insights into customer service problems that companies need to address. Carol thinks Rebecca is being discriminated against because of her age and education level. She believes Rebecca's ideas are too advanced for small-town employers who prefer inexperienced workers they can control easily. Mom is conflicted because she wants to support Rebecca but also understands Dad's frustration. She's been talking to me about the situation and asking whether I think they're being too harsh or too lenient. I've tried to explain to Mom that Rebecca's problem isn't bad luck or discrimination, it's her inability to understand what employers are paying her to do. Rebecca thinks every job is an opportunity to redesign the business, but employers want people who can follow instructions and work within existing systems. But I don't think Mom really understands what I'm trying to tell her. She sees Rebecca as an ambitious daughter who's struggling in a difficult job market, not as someone who's sabotaging her own career through her attitude and behavior. I've decided I can't keep getting involved in this family drama. Rebecca has been texting me asking for support and money, but I've stopped responding to her messages. I can't help someone who refuses to acknowledge that they have a problem. Dad has reached the same conclusion. He told me last week that he's done trying to help Rebecca until she's ready to admit that her approach to work isn't working. He said enabling her behavior by providing financial support and making excuses wasn't helping her learn or grow. Rebecca is now 28 years old and has been fired from more jobs than most people have in their entire careers. She's living with relatives who don't know the full extent of her employment problems, and she's planning to continue the same behavior that's caused all her previous failures. I don't know what it's going to take for Rebecca to realize that she's the problem. Maybe she needs to become truly desperate before she'll consider changing her approach. Maybe she'll never figure it out and will spend her whole life blaming other people for her failures. What I do know is that I can't fix this situation for her. Rebecca has to want to change, and right now she's convinced that everyone else is wrong and she's right. Until that changes, she's going to keep repeating the same cycle of getting hired, causing problems, and getting fired. I feel bad for Rebecca because I think she genuinely wants to succeed and contribute. But wanting to help and actually being helpful are two different things. Rebecca has never learned the difference between being an employee and being a consultant, and she's not willing to accept that distinction. Our family is probably going to be divided about this situation for a long time. Some relatives will continue enabling Rebecca's behavior because they don't want to seem unsupportive. Others will get frustrated and stop helping when they realize that Rebecca isn't going to change. I've chosen to step back and focus on my own life. I can't save Rebecca from herself, and I can't fix the problems she's created in our family. All I can do is hope that someday she'll figure out how to be the employee that employers actually want to hire. But I'm not optimistic about that happening anytime soon.